What if your body was hiding a limb you once had, and evolution took it from you? Not just removed, but buried beneath your skin. A memory sealed in bone. And the question is not just why we lost it, but what we traded for its silence. Hidden at the very end of your spine, there's a clue, a bone you never think about. The coccyx. It doesn't help you balance, doesn't sway with emotion, doesn't aid your movement. But once, it did. Once, it was the key to surviving a world of branches, predators, and endless motion above the forest floor. In the theater of evolution, the tail was more than a prop. It was a performer in every leap and landing, a silent communicator, a balance between gravity and instinct. And yet, over time, it disappeared. Not all at once. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly. Generation by generation, our tails shortened, retreated, and eventually vanished from sight, but not from memory. Because we still carry its shadow. Not just in our biology, but in our behavior. In the way we shift when we sit. In the pain some feel from a bruised coccyx. In the rare children born with tail-like appendages. It never fully left us. It simply fell silent. Today, we ask why. Why did we lose our tails? Was it necessity? Accident? Or something more profound? This isn't just a question of anatomy, it's a question of identity. Of what it means to evolve. Of what it costs to stand upright and reach for the sky. And in the following chapters, we'll peel back the layers of time, science, and symbolism, to uncover the real reason behind the vanishing tail. Long before our ancestors ever placed a cautious foot on the forest floor, they ruled the skyways of the canopy. The jungle wasn't just their home, it was their kingdom. But survival in this vertical world came with demands. It wasn't enough to be strong or fast. To thrive above ground meant to evolve a body designed for precision, rhythm, and grace. The tail wasn't optional, it was essential. In this ancient acrobatic world, the tail was a living gyroscope. It allowed for sharp directional changes mid-leap, provided balance during sudden stops on narrow branches, and even helped in social signaling, flicking, curling, or straightening as a way to communicate mood, warning, or intent. The tail wasn't a leftover from some primitive blueprint. It was an innovation, a finely tuned tool, engineered by natural selection over millions of years. Species like lemurs, gibbons, and monkeys mastered their arboreal lives through their tails. And for a time, so did the early ancestors of humans. Fossil records show clear signs: vertebrae built for tail motion, muscles shaped to control its every twitch. It was not a vestige. It was a legacy. But then, something shifted. Perhaps it was environmental, a climate change that thinned the forests, a scarcity of food in the canopy. Or perhaps it was curiosity, a few bold primates venturing to the forest floor, discovering a different kind of freedom. Whatever the cause, evolution took notice. And over generations, those who lived more on the ground needed their tails a little less. And eventually, not at all. That was the beginning of the end, not just for tails, but for a way of life. And as we stood taller, we also left something behind in the trees, not just a limb, but a relationship with movement, agility, and instinct that we would never fully regain. The moment our ancestors first stepped onto the forest floor, everything changed. Not instantly, but inevitably. The ground was not the forgiving web of branches they knew. It was open, uncertain, dangerous. Predators roamed in plain sight. Food had to be hunted, not plucked. And movement? It had to be relearned from scratch. The tail that had once provided elegance and balance in the air became cumbersome. On the ground, agility meant different things, not leaping and landing, but walking, running, carrying, and eventually, standing. And so, the body began to reshape itself. The spine tilted. The hips widened. The legs grew stronger. But the tail? It began to shrink. No longer necessary. No longer functional. Just a faint echo of who we once were. But evolution doesn't throw things away lightly. It folds them inward. It buries them. It waits. And in that waiting, the tail became a ghost, receding bone by bone, vertebra by vertebra, until only its base remained. A stub. A coccyx. A symbol. This descent wasn't just physical, it was psychological. With each step onto the savannah, our ancestors saw farther. Thought deeper. Planned longer. The ground forced them to confront new problems, new tools, new threats. And in facing them, they changed. Slowly. Irreversibly. The price? An entire limb lost to time. But in return, perhaps, the beginnings of thought. The beginning of memory. The first seeds of what we now call the human story. To stand upright is to see farther, across savannas, over time, into the future. It was one of evolution's most radical experiments. When our ancestors began to walk on two legs, the world opened before them. Their hands were freed for tools, for carrying, for touch. Their eyes could scan the horizon. Their minds could wander. But this gift, this elevation, came with a price few ever consider. The human spine was never meant to bear vertical burden for hours, days, decades. It was sculpted for movement, for swinging, for balancing across branches with a tail that counterweighted the dance. Without it, the body had to reinvent itself. Vertebrae compressed. The pelvis rotated. Muscle groups rewired. And still, it hurt. Even today, we feel that debt, in aching backs, in fractured discs, in the pain of sitting for too long. In a way, our bones still remember what we gave up. And the tail, that ancient stabilizer, that graceful rudder of movement, became obsolete in the face of this towering posture. Balance came now from the curvature of the lower spine, from fine muscle control, from relentless adaptation. The tail, once active and expressive, faded into the silent coccyx, a sealed door to a life once lived. But the cost was more than physical. In rising upright, we grew apart from our past. We began to see ourselves not as part of the forest, but separate from it. Superior. We exchanged agility for endurance, instinct for abstraction. The upright human became a builder, a thinker, a wanderer, but perhaps also a species untethered. So the question lingers beneath our straightened backs and calloused feet, was standing up worth what we left behind? Nature doesn't erase in haste. It edits, with patience, precision, and purpose. And the mystery of our missing tail, long seen as an anatomical riddle, has a genetic shadow hiding in plain sight. Inside every one of us lies a code, 3 billion letters long, a genetic manuscript passed down, rewritten by time. And somewhere within that code, a chapter has been sealed shut. Scientists have long suspected that the story of our tail's disappearance is written not in fossils, but in silence, the absence of function where once there was fire. In 2021, a team of geneticists pinpointed a mutation in a single gene called TBXT, also known as the T-box transcription factor. In most tail-bearing animals, this gene helps regulate tail development during embryonic growth. But in humans, and in our close cousins, the apes, the gene carries a mutation that essentially turns off tail formation. The blueprint is still there. The instructions remain. But they are muted. Disarmed. For a fleeting moment in the womb, every human has a tail. A brief biological whisper from deep time. And then, it vanishes, reabsorbed, dissolved into the developing tissue like a dream you can't remember. Even more haunting is the rare phenomenon of true tails, babies born with small, functional tail-like appendages. Harmless, often surgically removed, but unmistakable. As if evolution occasionally forgets to shut the door completely. A glitch. A ghost. A genetic memory. So, did we lose our tails because we needed to? Or because a single mutation echoed through enough generations to redefine our shape? Sometimes, the fate of an entire species turns not with thunder, but with a single, silent switch. While we gave ours up, the world remains full of creatures who never did. They kept their tails, and with them, a different kind of story. One rooted not in walking tall, but in clinging to the heights. In many ways, their evolution paused where ours accelerated. But pause is not regression. In their world, the tail is still king. In monkeys, it's a fifth limb, capable of gripping, balancing, and feeling. In kangaroos, it's a counterweight, a springboard, a rudder. In cats, a compass. In fish, propulsion itself. The tail, to them, isn't an old relic. It is the present tense, alive, functional, and beautiful. We see their tails as quaint, primitive. But that's only because we've forgotten their value. The creatures who kept them did so because it worked. Because in their world, vertical, cautious, graceful, the tail remained essential. And yet, we share their ancestors. In their motion, we glimpse our past. In their tails, we find fossils that breathe. Why did we evolve without them? Not because we were stronger, but because we were different. We traded balance for brain, agility for abstraction. The tail wasn't removed out of weakness, it was surrendered, for the potential to walk, to think, to build. But when we watch these animals move, effortless, instinctive, harmonious, it's hard not to feel something stir. A reminder. A longing. A quiet echo of who we used to be. Even after a limb is gone, the body sometimes refuses to forget. It aches where nothing remains. It twitches without reason. This is the phantom limb, a phenomenon where nerves once used for movement still fire in remembrance. It's as if the body holds on to the ghost of what was, or what should be. But what happens when that phantom isn't a lost arm, but a lost tail? Buried deep in our spinal architecture is a structure called the coccyx, the tailbone. Small, triangular, seemingly useless. But for evolutionary biologists and neuroscientists, it's a monument to memory. And not just physical memory, but something more ancient. More instinctual. The coccyx connects to muscles we still use, those that support posture, help us sit, even assist in childbirth. It's not entirely vestigial. But more importantly, its position hints at a function we once had. A base of movement, expression, and instinct. Some researchers believe the neural pathways that once controlled a tail may not be entirely gone. Merely dormant. Buried in our nervous system like unused software. Every time we balance suddenly, shift our weight, or fall backwards, the tailbone reminds us, in pain or reflex, that something used to be there. Something important, and then, there are the stories. The strange reports. The children born with tail-like extensions. The dreams where people remember having one. The sensations of motion where no motion exists. Are these just curiosities? Or are they echoes of a forgotten interface between mind and body? Sometimes, evolution doesn't clean the slate. It leaves behind whispers, biological riddles that ask not just what we lost, but what we still carry.